Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Catt White.
And I'm Brijet Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Get ready to catch up on all things farmers market pros with us. Today, we're chatting about whether farmers markets are the springboard or the end goal when it comes to business success.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Square, helping small farmers, food makers, crafters, and market managers increase their incomes by making it easy to process credit and debit card sales on the street and in the tents. We use Square ourselves to sell shopping bags at the info booth and to invoice farmers and vendors online for space fees. The income you generate appears promptly in your bank account without having to juggle end-of-day closeouts. Square's user-friendly system makes it easy to track inventory and payroll and generate clear reports. For more information on reducing stress and increasing your income with Square, click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everybody. Today we are chatting about how some vendors, specifically food makers, commit to farmers markets as a long-term business platform, or if they're seeing the markets as a springboards to their ultimate wholesale or retail goals.
It's kind of a sore subject. We're going to get into it in just a second and break it down. Little reminder, conference tickets are live now for the Intense Conference next March. Be sure and check in. There is super early bird pricing happening right now. That is really easy. We know that early bird means taking a leap of faith since we're still determining the schedule, but it saves you a ton of money. So if you're willing to just take the jump and assume that our content is going to be as amazing as always, this is the time to buy. This is the time to make your reservation.
You trust us. Come on. We're going to have a good time. So let's get into our episode today.
So this conversation started because our state food and agriculture agency promoted a webinar on a value-added product incubator program, which actually looks really cool. But their big headline and all the emails about it were, tune in, take this program, take this class, learn to make the leap from farmers markets to grocery stores, as though farmers markets aren't already grocery shopping environments. So, of course, I was aggravated. I mean, if you're old enough to remember Rodney Dangerfield, we don't get no respect. Why is that? I mean, should being in grocery stores be the end goal? And certainly should our agency be promoting that when we pay them so much money to attend farmers markets? So that was a little bit aggravating.
Yeah. And aggravating for us, of course, and then also maybe for the food makers as well, because we know from speaking to our market vendors who have made that leap is that the grass is not always greener. Like some folks like the wholesale route, but really there's a lot of different things to consider when you're leaving the farmer's market. So are you moving away from small batch production and keeping the retail price to becoming a large scale manufacturer and dealing with the world of wholesale sales?
Which is a whole different world.
Not really going to work for everybody. So, it's an interesting conversation. And I think it's really dependent on what the vendor's business goals are and, what direction they take. What market are they in? Is it working for them? And what, store are they looking to wholesale to? So there's obviously a lot of detailed information that goes into this. But overall, I don't really like the approach that folks are just in the farmers markets to launch somewhere else. That's not true. We have a lot of market vendors that have been in the markets for a long time. This is their job. That is the end goal. And also it's not really setting them up for success when you're like, hey, just go ahead and launch into wholesale, because then their profit margin just really, shrinks and they don't get to talk to the customers and all these other things. I mean, we'll get into it in the episode, but yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is. I mean, we've seen a lot of vendors stay really long term. We've got second generation vendors, both farmers and food makers, that, their kids are taking over now because they've been in the markets for so long. And there's a lot of reasons to do that, to stay in a market as a long-term strategy. There's, it's a lifestyle business. Maybe you don't want to be managing a lot of employees. Maybe you like that kind of independent thing. Or it's a family business, which is hard to do if you get into a much larger operation where you've got investors and a lot of employees. Keeping the business kind of within your family can be a great generational way to build wealth and to create independence. You kind of decide your own schedule. I mean, given that once you commit to markets, you know where you got to be, but you get to choose how many markets a week that you do. You're not kind of locked into somebody else's delivery schedule, and when you have to have product in a store, and when you have to deliver to somebody else, or, if you're in a mall with a retail outlet, what hours you have to stay open. And then you also, I think a lot of our food makers find and choose to stay in markets because when they stay small batch like that, they control the product quality. I mean, there is an element of once you get into a larger manufacturing situation, it's tough to keep control over having the ingredients in your product stay exactly the same. Contract packagers may go to a different supplier. I mean, we've seen people do it successfully, but it's tricky. It's a lot to think about. And then, of course, I mean, the whole point of direct marketing, besides knowing your customers and your producers face to face, is that the producers, whether it's farmers or food makers, keep the retail price of their product, which is certainly not the case in other ways.
Yeah, and they can change the prices as they maybe make a different packaging size or use a, different, like take the leap to using more organic products. So that's more expensive, or more organic ingredients. And so that's more expensive. So they can increase the price of their product kind of easier on a whim more than having to change this whole system that you have going on with a wholesaler that's buying from you. So having that flexibility to really tailor your product to your end user is much easier at the farmers markets. You can make those little shifts, or you can make a smaller package. We've seen folks at the market that go and make, 3-ounce packages of whatever they're doing so that folks at the market can take it on an airplane with them. And, just little things like that aren't really possible very easily when you're doing large scale wholesale and going that route. So different reasons to stay or grow.
For sure. I mean, we have seen vendors make a leap to wholesale and be successful and be happy with it. I mean, one of our claims to fame is that mush started at our farmers markets. Actually, they started with our Vendor 101 program, but we're at the markets and then went on Shark Tank and made a deal with Mark Cuban. And now, when I'm cruising around Philadelphia, I see big billboards, Target billboards with mush on them. It's like, oh, they grow so fast.
Like a proud mama. Every time I'm at the store and I see mush, it's just like, oh, my little baby, look at it. Look at it on the shelf. So great. Really proud of them. And they did great at the market and they were great market vendors. And then they also just did a really great job at expanding. And I'm sure there was a ton of pain points along the way, but they, did a great job. And that was a wonderful springboard for them to be in the farmer's market for sure. And same with Bitchin' Sauce, started at our market, grew into really a local, like kind of cult favorite sauce, and then ended up in Costco and is now just all over the place. So same with Baba Foods and just other kind of like products that we all know and love. Those are like market growth stories. So it does happen, and it can be extremely successful.
Yeah. So some of these folks have really done a good job of that. You do need to be aware that it's not going to be the same as selling independently in a market. You need to be ready to deal with either contract packaging or secure a much larger production facility for yourself, have a lot of employees. If you're operating independently now, or you just have one team member or two, this is going to be a whole different gig now.
Yeah. And the liability, the risk. I mean, once you're kind of letting go of that product, it's like out of your hands, and who's handling it and who's selling it and buying it. So yeah, it's just kind of letting some of those things go and taking on more risk and more labor costs and production costs. So keeping those things in mind.
You also need to be super aware of your costing, including your labor costs. If you've been kind of writing off your own labor costs, we've cautioned people about this before, as a sweat equity thing, instead of really taking into account what kind of time you spend to create your product. You need to get really clear on what those numbers are, because when you start hiring employees, they're not going to work for free. Even if you're working for yourself for free, not going to happen that way. And before you set a price with a distributor or a wholesaler, which is going to be, of course, much lower because they have to make their margin and pay for their overhead, you want to be really, really clear that you're not losing money on each unit that goes out the door. And you know what? There's a lot of hidden cost to dealing with distributors and wholesalers. You can get a really good reality check by going to the series that Sarah Delavan's been doing lately on her Good Food CFO podcast. And it gets real down and dirty and detailed about distribution charges and promotion charges and how much free product you have to provide to certain retailers in order to get your spot on the shelf, and how to really establish your own negotiating power in those situations.
Yeah, and getting some good consultants, some who frustrate us from the same attitude that farmers markets are what you do while you're waiting to get into a real business, kind of
quote unquote real business.
Real business. Yeah. Or just like I had a phone call with someone who was inquiring about getting a vendor space the other day. And she was just asking for some information. Of course, I just pointed her to Vendor 101 because she was starting from scratch. And she said she was at a business center talking about starting a catering business. And they were like, oh, well, just start with the farmers markets. Just like dip your toe in and see how you like it. Just test it out. And we talked for a while and she was like, I thought that I could just kind of show up and like sell some food that I made at my house to kind of see if people liked it. That's kind of what they were insinuating. And I was like, well, no, you have to get this permit, and you need this equipment, and you have to get insurance, and you have to apply to markets and see if they even have space for you. And she was like, wow, this business, consultant just had no idea. They were like, just go stop by the farmer's market and ask people if they like your food. And it was like the lack of understanding is really frustrating as a farmer's market operator, and can be frustrating to folks trying to get into these businesses because they're just being misled about the fact that farmers markets are real businesses and they aren't, being fully given that whole picture. So, trying to get that word out.
Yeah, we've seen that. There's a consultant that really promotes her class as this is how you get into farmers markets. But when you dig down into it, what she's telling you is that this is how you get into farmers markets so that you can go into real retail, quote unquote, real retail. And she's telling folks, so it'd be good to start at a farmers market before you get your packaging and your labeling down. Well, hello, you got to have your packaging and labeling down to be at a farmer's market or to get into a farmer's market. So just got to be careful, kind of pick and choose among your consultants. We let Ali Ball, she's spoken at our conference before, and while she is a retail ready person and incredibly good at it, so she does have still a little bit of that tone that, hey, you should, this is your big chance to move up. She's also very clear, and we've talked before, that for some folks, that's not the right decision, that you will be happier remaining small batch, following your passion, which might be producing your product a certain way. And so she will help you figure out, if it's good to make a move or if that's really not the way that you should go.
Yeah, for sure.
And then there's some good hybrid models.
Yeah, so there's good hybrid models. Maya's Cookies, who we've had Maya on the podcast before, heavy duty online sales, plus her own brick and mortars, multiple locations where, folks can come in and buy her cookies and other treats at her shops. And then she still does some regular farmers markets and special events. So she has a good kind of wide reach. She does have a very, large staff, and it's a big business. So, she had to take on a lot to make that happen. But it really seems like it's working for her, and she has really dialed in what it takes to have multiple outlets to get your product out there for sure.
And it's a lot to take on, but she has really kind of stayed in the space of still her keeping the markups and the retail, because she owns her own retail shops, and she does a lot of online where, you've got some shipping fees in there, but that may be mitigated by what you'd spend for staff at the farmers markets or space rent or what have you. And then she does markets and events. So all of her stuff really is just different forms of margin that still go to her, that, not to a distributor, not to a wholesaler that has to cover their costs.
Yeah, for sure. And then like Ruth's number 5 salsa at markets, and Alto with a retail group and shop. We have a new vendor that just joined our markets, a plant-based production. He makes like vegan dressings and sauces. And I spoke to him for a while when he was applying. He's just in a few like boutique grocery stores and like little, corner market type grocery stores, and then in a handful of farmers markets. So he's doing a good blend where he does have some wholesale retail that he's doing, but also really appreciates and understands how important it is to be at the markets, because he can get that face-to-face customer feedback. He can talk to his end users. He's adjusted his packaging a little bit, his labeling. He's doing some wholesale to restaurants now that use his dressings like in their dishes at their restaurant. So really kind of intentionally expanding your reach, but knowing the importance of staying in the farmer's market and being there for the long haul for sure.
Yeah. And of course, as market managers, we don't really want people to just pop into the market to use them as a focus group. Although I've been thinking about kind of adding that to our sponsor of the day packages, where for even more money, you can, to kind of subsidize our farmers rents and things, those groups that want to come in and test a product that's never going to be in a market, they're testing it to sell it at a grocery store. We've always turned them down because we don't want to point people towards grocery stores. But some of them have products that we're probably never going to see at our market, a category of product. And it is a super valuable focus group to be at the market. So long term, whether you're doing it to be a long-term market vendor or whether you're doing it as part of an overall strategy of developing a hybrid where you're at markets and in wholesale or in your own retail or online ordering system, I mean, the markets are undeniably an amazing focus group. So it will definitely work for you there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and also we see prepared food vendors that come in and their goal is to open up a brick and mortar restaurant. So they're trying to test out different dishes and what are the flavors that people like and what's easy for them to prep ahead of time and cook. What can they make fastest? What looks great, on a plate. So I think having those folks at the market, I think I've seen some prepared food vendors come into our markets. I think I can tell that even though they say that it's not, like their goal is to open a restaurant at the end of the day. But then once they're in the market, they are just they're being so successful there. They're great market vendors. They have a great following of customers. They enjoy the fact that they can pick the days of the week of the markets that they want to, participate in and use the other days for prepping and menu development and, maybe make some friends with other restaurant owners and decide, well, having a hot food stand at a farmer's market is definitely a lot less work than having an actual brick and mortar restaurant. It's less permitting, it's less maintenance, less staff. Having a restaurant's a 24-hour day job. So, I mean, that can actually be better for them to be in a farmer's market situation. So it is a nice place for people to come and see if that'll work for them. And maybe not use it as a springboard exactly, but to come and see, is this something that I really want to do? And is this something I can do every single day? Or is this something I want to do a couple times a week in special events? So, I like being that kind of business development kind of hub for people for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they'll figure it out. And we've got, like a lot of times we'll have somebody say, oh, I'm going to open a brick and mortar, but I'm still going to be at the markets. And then there's just no way to juggle both. And if a staff member calls out, you aren't going to keep your restaurant closed. You're going to call out of the market. So it's tricky to juggle both, but it can be done. And we have seen people that, go out there and then come back. So staying at the markets long term is okay too. Not every business has to scale. We really promote the idea of right size businesses, which means the right size for you. You're young, you're a go-getter, you want to be in all the outlets, you want to be online, you want to be in wholesaling to stores, you want to do it all. For sure, go for it. Have the money to do it, have the knowledge so you're not getting hit on the pricing being wrong in your wholesale side. Good for you. But not every business has to do that. There are many people who are just happy vendors who only sell at markets. They like the community. They like talking to their customers. They like talking to fellow producers. They like being able to control their schedule a little bit more. And it's okay to give wholesale a whirl and then find out it's not right for you and come back to markets or add markets back as part of a hybrid.
Just be careful not to, on your way out of the market, say, I'm going to make it big now. Like, I'm out of here. Like, no notice. I'm just calling out on my last day. I'll never see you again. Like, so long, suckers. And then try to come back in like a couple months and say, actually, I want to come back to the market because that didn't work out. So don't burn those bridges on your way out, okay? Because we've seen that too. And it's always very sad because it's like, hey, I liked you and your product, but you did not go out in the best way. So think ahead on that.
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, and that's good to talk about as a manager. How do we deal with vendors that are leaving to go into wholesale? So, we always say congratulations, even if we're really sorry to see them go. And we say congratulations and bite our tongues if we are sad to see them go and also have actual concerns about whether they've done their homework and they're going to do okay at that wholesale pricing model. We do a lot of times try to just ask them a couple of leading questions. Hey, have you recosted now that you're going to be doing that? Or how are you going to manage manufacturing those big amounts? That's going to be exciting. But, plant in their heads that those are questions that they need to be asking. Every once in a while, we see people that haven't seemed to ask those questions. We do ask for 2 weeks notice. I mean, as you say, burning your bridges on the way out is not a good idea. So here's a question for a market manager too. A lot of times we'll see people leave to go do wholesale or open their own spot, and they'll say, hey, but when my customers come looking for me, point them over here. That's a little tricky. I mean, if they're hybrid, they're still in the markets and they also have a restaurant, we totally promote that. We talk about people's grand openings and we really encourage that. But if they're totally leaving markets, and they're not going to be with us at all anymore. It's not exactly what we do to point people towards them to buy a product. What our job is to promote the people that are in the market. So, if one sauce maker leaves and somebody comes looking for it, our first inclination is going to be, hey, have you checked their pesto? And point them towards a vendor that's still in the market. So, we certainly wish them the best, and we wouldn't hide where they are, but we're also really not in the business of promoting people that aren't at the market, just out of fairness to the people that are paying rent to be in our markets.
Yeah, that's always a really tricky thing and kind of something to think about ahead of time as a market operator. And also as a vendor, like, what is your expectation of this market manager, and having a little understanding of that. You can certainly tell your market friends, your exciting news, and I'm sure they'll talk about you and where to find you to customers. But yeah, just our job is to promote the folks that are a part of our market first. So kind of keeping that in mind. But I mean, I feel like people have left and opened restaurants, and I'm always telling the customers like, oh, go check out that restaurant. It's really great. But, you're already here at the market right now. I'm sure you're hungry right now. So, you can eat at the market while you're here. And then another day, go check out the new restaurant with our old vendor. So, just keep that market family even after you've left the market. You're still a part of the family.
And most of our vendors do that. And then we've always been really happy to welcome them back. I mean, assuming we have space. If somebody leaves the market and we fill that category, I'm not going to kick out somebody that came in while that guy was gone because he's decided that wholesale's not the right gig for him and he wants to come back. But we do, we've already got a relationship with them. We know that they show up on time, presumably, that they do a good business, that our customers like them. We're certainly going to try and figure out a way to welcome people back if they go out into a different avenue and then change their mind and want to come back to the markets.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all about, having a full market, and you want to do what's best for your market and what's best for your shoppers. So having that variety of items, no matter if someone has left and is coming back. So we've seen it a couple times. And I just love our position as market managers because we get to see that growth, and always just really proud when our vendors, even if they leave the market, if they do expand into wholesale or brick and mortar. I know we've said it before, but just I think as a market operator, you just feel really proud that they were able to start their business off at the market, and it helped launch them into this success because markets are so great at what they do, which is, give that customer feedback and be these little business incubators for whatever kind of business you're in. So just so proud.
For sure. Yeah, it's exciting to see people grow. So no matter how you decide to position your food business, don't think you have to do what everyone thinks is the right way to grow. Think about what fits you and your family and team best. Work with your market community, and let's all grow together. Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Square for helping farmers market participants and managers increase their income and reduce their stress, and for supporting Intense, the Farmers Market Conference. To sign up for easy credit card processing on-site at your markets and simple invoicing back at your desk, just click the Square logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app, YouTube, or wherever you access this podcast, and tell us how you're enjoying Tent Talk. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss the next episode. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros Community. Follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros, and find online education and other resources on our website at farmersmarketpros.com. Don't forget to sign up for our email newsletter while you're there. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was produced by Haley Pascalades. Original music by David Mead. Join us next week for another great episode.